Hello, my name is Katrina Castro, and I'm an aquatic ecologist with Colorado Natural Heritage Program. The following presentation will cover the methods involved when collecting data on hummocks. You can follow along in section 7.1 of the field protocol for lentic, riparian, and wetland systems. Hummocks are microtopography features that form more easily in finer textured soils. Because of this, it is more likely for hummocks to occur in wetland and riparian areas, since these areas typically contain more finer textured soil and organic matter than the soil found in the uplands. The mechanics behind the formation of hummocks can be related to several different factors, one being the freeze-thaw dynamics that occur in the soil of northern regions and high-altitude environments. The formation of hummocks may also be caused or exaggerated by ungulate behavior, specifically the degree of soil disturbance and plant use on susceptible soils. The irregularities of the ground surface tend to encourage ungulates to walk in the interspaces between the mounds. The increased traffic within those interspaces become more vulnerable to soil loss and soil compaction, while mounds become more vulnerable to additional frost heave, dewatering, and erosion. For the purpose of the riparian and wetland aim protocol, data collection on hummocks is intended to characterize the physical structure of hummocks within the plot and to help detect changes due to livestock use, erosion, hydrologic modification, and changes in the biotic community over time. Hummock data is a contingent method when applying the riparian and wetland aim methods. Contingent methods are only used where relevant and when they are important for management purposes, and are not necessarily applicable in all sites. Project leads will decide if and when these methods are carried out based on monitoring objectives. If hummock methods are included in the monitoring plan for a project or specific plot, but there are no hummocks at the time of sampling, crews should record the absence as negative data. In contrast, if hummock methods are not included in the monitoring plan for a project or specific plot, no data will be collected, even if hummocks are observed. The methods detailed in this presentation record the number, height, length, slope, and vegetated condition of hummocks within the plot. It is important to collect these data only after vegetation data has been collected, in order to minimize disturbance along the transect. Hummocks are defined in this method as surface features with a height of 10 centimeters or more from the top of the feature to the interspace or depression adjacent to the feature, and is 10 centimeters or more in length along the transect. For the purposes of this protocol, holes and soil displacement created by a single livestock or ungulate hoofprint, also known as post holes or pugging, are not counted as high or low points, even if they are greater than 10 centimeters deep. In this example, you can see the type of ground disturbance pictured on the left is different than the disturbance pictured on the right. The picture on the left has many individual hoofprints, several of which may be deeper than 10 centimeters. However, those features are not considered hummocks. This would instead be monitored as soil alteration, described in section 8.2 of the protocol. The photo on the right features many individual hummocks. Depending on the height and length along a transect tape, data would be collected on these features. The height requirements of an individual hummock along the transect is 10 centimeters or more from the top of the hummock to the bottom of the adjacent interspace. This height requirement is applicable to either side of the feature. So a feature with a leading edge height of 8 centimeters and a trailing edge height of 13 centimeters would be a qualifying hummock, and data would be collected. Because the height requirement applies to both the leading and trailing edge of a feature, it is important to measure both sides before ruling out a feature as non-qualifying. In addition to height, all qualifying features must extend along the transect for a minimum of 10 centimeters in length. In order to identify if a feature falls under this criteria, it is helpful to look straight down at the transect tape and follow the two-dimensional line created by one edge of the transect tape. When identifying qualifying hummocks, be sure to push back any vegetation that may obscure high and low points along the transect tape. Once you have determined that a feature is a qualifying hummock, you will need to record the location and length of the hummock. Begin by recording the location along the transect where the feature starts, in centimeters. If a transect begins in the center of a hummock, record the start as 0 centimeters. Looking straight down at the transect tape, use one side of the tape to create a two-dimensional line. Following that line, record the start and end of the hummock feature in centimeters. Consider the start and end of a hummock to be where there is a noticeable change in slope from the adjacent ground surface or inner space to the hummock feature. This is more obvious on features with steep slopes and less obvious on features with gentle slopes. The vertical orange lines in this figure indicate where you would record the start and end of a hummock feature. Record the start and end of the hummock in the appropriate fields within Survey 123 or on the Hummocks datasheet. After recording the start and end of the hummock feature, record the height of the leading edge of the hummock. If the height is less than 10 centimeters on the leading edge, record the height on the trailing edge of the hummock. To collect height measurements, be sure to use a ruler or other straight object and press firmly down on the top of the hummock to ensure the object is level and creates a line parallel to the ground where the initiation point begins. Using a ruler or avalanche probe, measure the vertical distance from the initiation point, or noticeable change in slope, to the top of the hummock. Record the height to the nearest centimeter. After determining the height of the feature, measure the slope of the leading edge. Place a straight edge or ruler against the leading edge of the hummock, from the base of the hummock to the top of the hummock, in line with the transect tape. Place a compass against the straight edge or ruler and record the slope. If measuring slope on a hummock with undercut sides, consider the slope as greater than 90 degrees and record the slope as vertical, or 90 degrees. The example in the photo on the right depicts when you would record an undercut hummock slope as 90 degrees. If there are two distinct angles on the leading edge of the hummock, such as a top photo, measure the angle from the most dominant face. If there are 3 or more angles, such as the bottom photo, measure the average angle by laying the straight edge of a ruler where it is most representative of the overall angle. Finally, estimate the percent vegetation cover of the leading edge of the hummock. All vascular, non-vascular, and entrained thatch should be considered cover. Any loose litter, overhanging thatch, leaves, or overhanging vegetation does not count as cover and should be pushed back from the face of the hummock while determining cover. To estimate cover, delineate an area on the hummock face extending from the initiation point, or noticeable change in slope, to the shoulder, found just below the top of the hummock. Extend that box 10 centimeters on both sides of the transect tape, creating a 20 centimeter wide box. Using a monitoring multi-tool can be especially helpful when delineating your cover estimation box. Estimate the canopy cover of vascular and non-vascular plants, plus any entrained thatch, and record using the appropriate vegetation cover classes. Be sure to refer to the cover estimate guides in Appendix N when estimating cover class. There are several measures you can take to ensure quality data collection. These steps are also listed in the protocol at the end of Section 7.1. It is recommended to reference these steps during and after a sample event. This concludes the Hummock Methods video. Thank you for listening.